Hello, Grace.
Hey, Megan.
I see Robin also. Awesome.
Well, my picture is Siobhan. I like that. But I'm not going to change my picture. She's going to be.
Oh, really? So when you go to
a
lock screen.
Yeah, the little icon over there is Siobhan. So I'll let that rest.
I can't see it on an Apple product.
Then don't worry about it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I do see you. It's got your name. That's funny.
I can change my name. It's the, oh, I really need this other, there it goes. Okay, I really need this other computer to work. Okay, now I'm going to admit myself.
Oh, Siobhan's the host. And then can you make me a
okay, how do I do that? Okay.
co-leader?
Co-host. Do you want to make Megan Mac the co-host? Yes, but I also want to make the other Grace.
Do you want to stop recording till we get everybody in the room? Or is it, are you worried about?
I don't really care.
No.
Is that a thing?
Good.
Do we have a quorum? Isn't that our new buzzword? Do we have a quorum?
So I can't talk and do math at the same time, but we get to be in person and not take votes. I mean, we get to be virtual and not take votes. So I don't think we need a quorum tonight, but thank you for tracking that. I'll definitely write down who's here. But as long as we're not in person, it simplifies things a little bit. So virtual is a little easier. Why don't we start with introductions, and people can call on each other if that works. So, and we have a couple of guests tonight. So take your time introducing yourself and say, you know, what brought you to the partnership or what brings you tonight. My name is Megan Mack. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the current chair of the partnership. I've been chair for about a year, actually, due to the prior chair needing to step down a little bit early. I've lived in Arlington since 2002, and I have a daughter who is starting high school at HB Woodlawn, but she was also there for middle school, so that makes things nice and easy. And I will pass it to Stephanie.
Thanks, Megan. Hi, I'm Stephanie Brown, and I am a guest today at the meeting, but I also sit a new data committee member. So very interested to see what this committee does. I have 3 children. My husband just retired from the Marine Corps, so we are now homeowners in Arlington, and all 3 of my kids, 1st, 3rd, and 5th grade, go to ATS. Thank you. Let's see if I can see who would be next. Judy?
Yes. Well, welcome to the partnership meeting. I'm Judy Hadden. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, I guess. Okay. I'm Judy Hadden, and I have been part of the partnership since we formed the partnership way back when. And I am also part of the Student Services Advisory Committee for APS. And I have grandchildren actually in Arlington schools, 3 in Arlington here and 3 in Arlington, Massachusetts. And I also am on the Youth Mental Health and Wellness Committee and co-chair that with Alicia Guajardo. And I don't know how to pass this on because I'm going to drive to carpool with my granddaughter, so I don't have this on my computer. So John, I know is there. John?
Oh, good.
Let's go to John.
I'm John Andelin, a longtime partnership member, longtime committee foundation member, longtime Arlingtonian. My connection with kids is that my wife has been bringing refugee kids home for 40 years. And so some of the earliest ones are now grandparents bringing their kids over. So we know a lot of young kids as well. training as a physicist originally, and then 20 years as senior staff on Capitol Hill. And I find the partnership and the data committee pretty interesting stuff. Dave Carlson, how about you?
My name is David Carlson. I'm a community member of the partnership. And for about 10 years or so, I'm also an active scout leader in Arlington and the whole area here. And I retired a year or so ago, and I do pro bono financial planning for Bright Paths in Fairfax, and I'd love to figure out a way to do more of that in Arlington as well. And I'll pass it to Robin.
Which one?
Two Robins.
We have two Robins.
We have two Robins.
Robins.
Whoever talks first then.
I'll go.
Who asked that question?
I'll go. This is Robin Ristow, and I work with Grace at Arlington Public Schools in planning and evaluation. And I've been there, I'm going into my 10th year. And I primarily work on program evaluation. And I'm a guest here today. So nice to join you.
You have to pass it, Robin.
I will pass it to the other Robin.
I figured that was coming. Hi, my name is Robin Harry. I'm a school health supervisor, and I also work with Robert in public health. Thank you for having me. I will pass it to Robert.
Hi, I'm Robert Sharp, Arlington County Public Health. Been with the Department of Human Services for 17 years. Long-term resident. I have an HB senior and a WNL graduate who's in college. And I will pass it to Dina.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dina Little. I work with the public library here in Arlington. I'm the Assistant Division Chief of Public Services, and I also oversee youth services. So mainly my background is in youth through the library. So that's why I like to join this group. And I will pass it along to Mike. Have you had a chance?
Hi, I'm Michael Brown, community member of the partnership. And I'll pass it to Daryl Sampson.
Hi, Daryl Sampson. I am with Arlington Public Schools, and I'm the Executive Director of Student Services. And I have been in this job since September 1st, so I don't have quite the seniority that many others on this call have. And I'm interested to learn more about this group and how we can support. And I will pass this to, have you gone, Grace?
No, you've not.
Grace.
I'm Grace Wagner. I'm a data specialist with APS and the partnership. And I am running this meeting, so all technical difficulties, I will apologize to for in advance. I am not a Zoom expert, but fingers crossed, so far so good. And I realize that I am looking, when I look up here, I'm not rolling my eyes. It's just a whole other screen that I am preferring to look at. So apologies there. And I will pass it to, I saw you come in. Where are you? Where's Kimberly Baldini? There we are. I knew it. I saw you come in.
I know. Hi, I'm Kimberly Baldini, Department of Parks and Recreation Youth Services Section Leader. Been with the partnership. We talked about this for years. I think I took over in 2019, and I have two kiddos in Fairfax County. I came in late, so raise your hand if you haven't been called on yet. Anyone? Mary Kadera. Go ahead.
I should unmute. Hi, everybody. I came in a little bit late because I was finishing dinner. I'm Mary Kadera with the school board, and I am the school board liaison to the partnership, and am really pleased to be here. I'm going to take notes while I am in the meeting. So if you see a weird reflection, like I'm flipping around, it's me going over to Word to type some notes to share with my colleagues. And I came in late, so I don't know if anybody else hasn't gone.
You can pass it to Pam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pam McClellan. I'm a guest at the meeting. I'm a retiree from Arlington Public Schools, and my grandkids are going to be going to Arlington Public Schools. My son graduated from Washington Liberty, and he he's now got 2 kids. So interested in just learning what the partnership is doing, and just thought I'd join in to see. Thank you for having me.
And I think that leaves Alicia, who just came in. If you are able to say hi, but if not, you're still getting set up.
Yes, hi, sorry, I'm late. Alicia Guajardo, and I am a member of the partnership, and let me see, sorry, I'm rushing to get on here. And I had 2 of my 3 children attended the Arlington Public Schools, but they're young adults now and on to the next phases of their lives. So I am involved with the youth mental health and wellness activities of the partnership, and also am involved with the SPAN, which some of you certainly know. It's the Suicide Prevention Alliance of Northern Virginia, and look forward to hearing about the data and other things tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry to just throw this at the people who came in, and I'm not trying to butcher any names. Is it Sierra? Sierra, yes. Okay, thank you. If you want to introduce yourself, sorry. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sierra Wright. I am with Arlington's Children's Behavioral Health Bureau, and I am the administrative assistant for Arlington, or specialist. Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
And Rick, and we'll see if anyone joins us after we talk to Rick.
Hello, it's Rick Strobuck. I'm the Deputy Director of Court Services with the Juvenile Court, and an Arlington resident and parent.
Megan, I don't know who Angelo is. Looks like they're still connecting. I don't know if we want to wait or move on.
Yeah, let's wait a second.
Okay. Angelo, I see you just joined us. I don't want to throw you on the spot, but if you, it is your turn to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, I'm Angelo. I am a new resident of Arlington as of July. Kind of involved in some local activities. I just graduated college from AU in DC, and I was interested in learning more about this committee, so I thought I'd come in, see what it's all about.
All right.
Great, you picked a great meeting. Angelo, you are not the only person for whom this is your first meeting. So I am gonna jump in now. Again, I'm Megan Mack for those who joined late. I use she, her. I'm the chair of the partnership this year. And as new folks have noticed, we have, what makes us a partnership is we have a number of community members and a number of Arlington staff people. There were a couple of really great events going on tonight, which is why we don't have some of the staff folks with us who are usually here. One is a presentation that Human Services coordinated, which we'll send out information about again if you haven't seen it. And because it's live this evening, but there will also be opportunities to watch the presentation. It's about suicide prevention. So those opportunities will still be available for at least the next week. And then the second is Dr. Jason Otley's first community conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he's the diversity, equity, and inclusion lead for the schools. So everything's happening tonight. I really appreciate your being here. I know there's a lot of great things to do in Arlington, as always. I'm gonna move the agenda around really slightly. Our main agenda item this evening is to do a walkthrough of the data for Your Voice Matters, the Your Voice Matters survey. And so Grace is going to walk us through how to access the dashboard, what kinds of information are there. John will pick up on that because John is currently chairing the data committee. Rick, I think I can hear you. I'm not sure if it was Rick. And so John will take it and sort of add on from some of the meetings that the data committee have had already. And other folks are welcome to join those meetings. Stephanie, who is maybe new to these meetings, is, as she said, with John on the data committee. Then we can talk a bit about the October meeting afterwards. But since we have Dr. Daryl Sampson here this evening, and it's his first meeting, and it's really a new role, I would love it if we could give him 5-10 minutes or however much time he would like to introduce how that role works. And then Mary, if you have any updates or if you want to introduce some of what you're working on, that'd be wonderful. So Daryl, I'll turn it to you.
Sure, thank you, Megan. So the role is new for APS, and really I think it's an opportunity to have someone at a high level of leadership who is looking really holistically at the mental health, physical health needs of students, as well as working to sort of establish strong, welcoming, and socially emotionally responsive places for students, particularly in the areas of student services, so school counseling, school psychology, and school social work. In addition to new in this particular shop is going to be sort of student registration and our Welcome Center and LSRC, so Language Services Resource Center, which really sort of oversees those first people that our kids and families see when they're first trying to enroll within APS. So the goal really, and again, I started September 1, so I'm moving at lightning speed in some ways. The goal really is to make sure that we are, my team is really looking out for all of those various needs and trying to help other people within the division make those connections, whether that's central office or for our folks within the schools. Does that help?
That is great. Does anyone have any questions about Daryl's role? Preliminary question. Well, wonderful. Welcome. And thank you for joining us when you just got started. So Mary, can I turn it to you?
It is great to see all of you again. And I know I speak for my colleagues when I say how excited we are that Dr. Sampson has joined APS and is on board in his new role. There is so much we want to do and so much work to be done in terms of student well-being and school culture and climate that this is really exciting. And I feel like we are assembling the all-star team to make some of those things happen. I was part of a meeting this summer where we looked, the data committee of the partnership specifically was looking at data from the SEL survey / screener that was administered to students last spring. So I was part of that discussion. The school board had a monitoring item where that data was shared with us in July, and we've had a lot of discussion about that. That is a separate but related, obviously, effort to the data that gets gathered through Your Voice Matters. And so we are keenly interested in digging into that as well. I have spent some time not just looking at the student data, but I'm really interested in the staff data in Your Voice Matters. And that may be outside the scope of what this group will talk about tonight, but one of my big beliefs is that the culture in schools and the well-being of staff, so the adult culture of schools and staff sense of well-being, carries over to support students' well-being and overall school culture. So I'm really interested in making sure that our staff feels like their needs are supported and their voices are being heard. So that's been a particular interest of mine, and I've shared some of my impressions of that with my colleagues. I am reaching out to educator groups like the Teachers Council on Instruction and the AEA, our Education Association, to get their impressions, just some qualitative information that can go with those quantitative results. In terms of things coming up for the school board that I want to make sure you all are aware of, we have 2 things coming up in the second week of October that I think might be of particular interest to this group. On October 11th, which is a Tuesday night, there is a school board work session where we will be talking about student behavior, school climate, and school culture. And we'll be looking not squarely at issues of mental health, but we will be talking about the student code of conduct, APS discipline policies, restorative practices in our schools. So all things that in my mind are very much tied to student well-being and students' social and emotional health. So that's a work session, which is a little bit more informal than a school board meeting. We're going to have members of our student advisory board come and share their impressions of school climate and the student code of conduct, which I think is going to be really fascinating. Then on Thursday night, October 13th, at a regular school board meeting, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have a monitoring item where we're going to have an update on school climate. And so that will be an additional way, sort of a more public facing way to kind of check in about where we are with that and what the plans are this coming year to do some work in that area. So both of those are open to the public. There's obviously public comment at the school board meeting on the 13th. If any of you want to deliver public comment, that would be most welcome. You're welcome also to attend and just listen in on the Tuesday work session too, if you want to.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? It's exciting. It reminds me that we jump right in September, October.
Oh yeah.
So summer's over.
For sure.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, I think we can do announcements at the end. I did put, I mistakenly put Lynn on the agenda, knowing full well that he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight. We don't have a coordinator update, so a full-time permanent staff coordinator. That's a work in progress still. And so with that, I would love to turn it over to Grace, and maybe I will just give a little bit of background. And these are things that I'm have been learning from Grace and the data committee. But just to say, there are 2 big regular surveys that the partnership has engaged with and created educational presentations out of. So Your Voice Matters is one big one, and that's an Arlington focused survey. The other is now called the Virginia Youth Survey. And I'm looking at Grace, thank you for the nods, which used to be called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And that one is conducted in Arlington, but feeds into data from surveys that are conducted around the state and I believe around the country. And so both of those together are great places for the board, the partnership, schools, and many others around the county to engage. And I know when I was first joining the partnership that we had, for example, a presentation by the then new group, the Black Parents of Arlington, if I have their name right. And they looked to the data to then think about their advocacy and organizing in the county and where they wanted to see to ask more questions and see potential room for change. And so the data always was a big reason for me to join the partnership and stay engaged. And so here we are. We have Your Voice Matters. It's easy enough, it seems, to work your way through the dashboard, but not necessarily intuitive what everything means. And so I think I've learned from Grace kind of in conversation with the partnership and also with the data committee. The third survey that we're not talking about tonight, because Grace and Robin, so their unit, were advised on, but we're not as involved with, is the social emotional learning survey that was mentioned earlier tonight. And so that kind of took place under student services. I'm not going to put Dr. Sampson on the spot since it took place before he got here, but it's definitely something where we can view the data and, ask questions. And the data committee, I know, focused on that for their first meeting. We didn't have Your Voice Matters information yet, but but Grace and Robin were less involved. Oh, great. Thank you. And so, yes, for anyone on the phone, the SEL is taking place again, it looks like on a more regular basis. So that'll be a nice way to kind of check the pulse and see and evaluate where we are. So with that, I want to turn it over to Grace with big thanks. She's not only taking Sally's role, Sally unexpectedly is stuck on leave. She meant to be back here. And so Grace is Sally this evening. She's Lynn, and she's also presenting as Grace. So thanks very much. Grace, I turn it to you.
Sure. And thank you for acknowledging that. I'm a little anxious. I also want to apologize. I also have 3 children who just came home. So hopefully they got the message to stay away, but big apologies in advance if that doesn't happen. Yeah, so I also wanted to mention that Virginia Youth Survey, we still do not have data. My line is the CDC's been a little busy, but at this point I really have no idea what's going on, why we don't have the data or anything. We were supposed to get it in August, and here we are coming up into September. So maybe we'll get it before they do the 2023 one. We'll see. So we did administer that in the fall of 2021. And so we should have gotten data in spring of 2022, and we haven't. So apologies for that. But I am going to talk about the Your Voice Matters, which again is a climate survey. So it's not going to ask, just a little background, it's not going to give questions like it does, like the VYS does about activities and things that children engage in, and how likely are they to, how exposed are they to drugs or alcohol or things of that nature. This is more about how are you feeling? Do you feel connected to your school? Do you feel connected? Do you have someone that you can rely on in your school, at home? What activities do you do at home? So it's not going to be as concrete as the VYS feels. I did mock up really quick because there are actually, it feels like there's not, but there are actually quite a few stakeholders or quite a few people that are part of this whole Your Voice Matters process. And so this is real quick. Do not judge my quick PowerPoint skills. I really spent way more time than I should have trying to figure out the right graphic, and I still couldn't find one. But I did want to just kind of show the different people who are involved just at a high level. And so the APS evaluation team is me and Robin. And when we administered this, we had another team member, but we managed the whole survey. So we're coordinating between all these other people to make sure that this gets administered at the right time, it has the right content, and we get the data. We gather information beforehand to provide to Panorama. So we provide all the student data, the ID numbers, the ways they log in, the family information, all of that. And then we support the stakeholders, the content owners, the school-based personnel, the survey respondents, and Panorama. And we are the direct contact with the vendor. So when Panorama talks to anybody, they talk directly with us. The content owners are not the evaluation team. So the content owners are places like human resources for the staff survey. And they're the ones that during the review process, we send those questions off to them. We ask them to review it in whatever way they feel it needs to be reviewed, whether it's a team, a committee, or if they want to ask other people to review it. If they want to make edits, if they want to add questions, if they want to remove questions, or response options. We do try to remind them that if you add questions, remove questions, or edit a question or the responses too heavily, that you cannot continue with trend data. So if you change a question too much, we won't be able to see what happened between 2020 and 2022. But most of our big edits between 2020 and 2022 were removing questions. I don't think we added any questions at all. Our school-based personnel, they coordinate the survey implementation of the school. Sometimes it's the principals, sometimes it's a testing coordinator, it could be a counselor, it could be anybody who the principal designates. And we work directly with that person unless we need to bring in the principal for any reason. Survey respondents are the ones who actually take the survey, our students, our staff, our families. And then Panorama is our outside vendor. They manage the survey administration platform. They manage the data input. They analyze our survey results. They own the results dashboard, which is what I'm going to walk us through in a few minutes. And they develop the insights report. Megan sent out the insights report earlier today. And if you haven't seen it, I'm just kind of going to walk through exactly what's like the insights report shows. But it talks about what it means, like percent favorable means. It shows you what our response rates were. It's short. It's meant to be just kind of highlights of what this outside vendor who has no stake in APS is seeing in the results. So it's not every single result. It's not every question. They don't go super in depth, but it does provide a good overview of what they're seeing as just survey people. I think it's 14 or 15 pages right now. It gives some demographics at the end. So it's a quick read. They put in some tables and charts, which is always fun. But I did want to kind of go over, the different people who are part of the Your Voice Matters, because it's not just the evaluation team or Panorama. It's actually a lot of people, and there's a lot more steps to this, but I just wanted to highlight those. I realized, like I said, I'm not a Zoom person, but I shared one thing and not the other. While I look for this, are there any questions on that? Okay. Screen one. Share. Okay, so this is what the insights report looks like, just giving you an idea. 2022, we also have one for 2020 that I can send around, and I believe there was one for 2018, but I wasn't here then, so you don't hold me accountable for that. But this is also on our website, so you can find the survey results. I usually, honestly, just Google APS, Your Voice Matters, and it pulls up our evaluation page. And down here, it talks about what the survey is, our results, our 2022 Your Voice Matters Insights report, which I just showed you. And then this is how you get to the dashboard, is by clicking right here. I believe Megan put it in the email as well. So I just want to make sure I have, as an administrator, sometimes it logs me in, but this is the public profile. So when you click on this, this should be exactly what you see. So this is the results. This is also where you would see results for the 2020 Your Voice Matters and the 2018 Your Voice Matters. And I'll show you how to get to those. In here, you'll be able to look at the data by Arlington Public School, the entire district, by individual sites. If I only wanted to look at Campbell, I could look at Campbell. If I only wanted to look at Kenmore, I could do that. If I only wanted to look at operations and transportation staff, I could do that. If you want to look at the staff at one particular school, you would click on the school. So those are options there. We have 4 school types: elementary, high, middle, and secondary. So if you only wanted to look at middle schools, you had that option, and elementary, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have 2 types, which is just schools and central office. So the central office wouldn't give you any student printouts. When I go in, I usually go straight just to the Arlington Public Schools, unless somebody wants me to look directly at a student. or excuse me, directly at a school for some reason or a department. And in here is where you're going to see we've got tabs for students, teachers and staff, family members, and then all respondents. I don't find the all respondents because I seldom go in there just to look at something, but you'll see these little icons over to the left that kind of line up with students, family members, teachers. So on students, just looking at this, you'll see here it says spring 2022, our 4th and 5th grade survey results. Here's our results, and here's the topic. Okay. The topics don't vary much between the 4th and 5th and the 6 to 12. But you will see if we can compare and show a change over time between 2020 and 2022 by topic, which means nothing changed within that topic, the question. You'll see an up means it went up 2 percentage points since spring 2022, or down in red or 0. Student well-being, social, emotional, and mental health could not be analyzed for change over time because we removed questions. So if you want to see what the change was, you really can't compare the two because we removed, I think there's only 1 or 2 questions left because we did start administering the SEL, which took out most of the questions that we normally, or that we asked in 2020. So in here, so that's that. So teachers and staff, we've got also 2 versions. We've got our FTE, full-time employee staff survey. And then down here, we have our hourly staff survey. If you wanted to see results, this is the first time that we were doing hourly staff separately, so there won't be a change over time here. Family members, there's only 1 set. And just so you know, family members in all grades were asked to take the survey. So while student survey is grades 4 to 12, families, any family associated currently in and that has a currently enrolled student at APS was asked to take the survey. So there's that. I'm going to go back to students. Again, you'll see here that we're under the district summary. And if I wanted to look directly at student well-being, trusted adult in a school. So these are our topics again. We're in 4th and 5th grade. We can click on this. And this is going to show us our change over time from spring 2020 to spring 2022. As you can see, we don't have 2018 on here. That's because the survey itself had a big change from 2018 to 2020. So we aren't able to compare that over time. You'll see how different groups responded. So EL status of the students that responded. You'll see gender breakdowns. You'll see gifted status. But what we find most interesting, or what I usually am in here looking at, are the individual questions. Each question will have a responded favorably depending on the type of question. There are some questions that we don't have percentages for responded favorably, and that's because of the way the question is worded. But you'll see what's down here. So this question, is there at least 1 adult in your school who you can talk to about the things that are going well for you? 85% of students responded favorably. If you hover over the I, it tells you 85% of respondents answered yes to this. So our content owners determined that yes is a favorable response to this question. And so that's why this one's marked in green. No is marked in red, as we all know, good and bad. And then you'll see the total number of respondents here and a percentage respondents and a percentage. You'll see breakdown by special education status, breakdowns by EL status, breakdowns by race. Let me find one that has multiple options. Go back. I always go back to summary. School safety. So in here, you're going to see things like, these are some questions that are unscored. So during the school year, how often has a student or a group of students posted hurtful or threatening things about you on social media or over email? 85% responded favorably. And our content owners determined that the only favorable response in this question is never. And 85% of the respondents said that they have never had this instance occur to them. However, this is down 2 percentage points since, excuse me, the same question was asked in spring 2020. But down here, you'll see if this happened more than once, did the same students post hurtful or threatening things each time? This is unscored because there is no favorable response to this. If yes, it was the same students, then that they still posted and something not favorable happened to the student. And if no, it still happened at least once, which is why this is considered unscored. Where did this occur? This just can't be scored favorably, but you'll see these were the options and then other social media. This is something that we would look at maybe in 2024 to say, 74% of students responded that they were bullied on another social media platform that's not on here. So we might be outdated on our list of social media platforms here. So we might want to look at that and see or get some more information. And then again, did you report the incidents to school staff? Yes or no? Again, it still happens, so there's just no good favorable responses. I'm gonna try to find one that has multiple responses. Here we go. So school climate went down 3 percentage points for students in grades 4 to 5. Overall, how much do you feel like you belong in your school? So this is one of those where the percentage favorable, it is 70%, but it's both of these responses. So how much do you feel like you belong in your school? Belong quite a bit, completely belong. Those are both considered favorable by the content owners. So there's those. And again, you can see those breakdowns there. If I wanted to look at a different survey, say I really don't care about 2022, I really want to look at 2020, I can go in my drop down here, spring 2020 and spring 2018. If I do spring 2020, it's going to pop up a new screen, but this is where you'll know which survey you're on. Once you log in, if you don't change this, you will automatically be in the spring 2022 version. But if I wanted to just look at any of these for spring 2020, this is how you would jump around for that. Another fun feature on here is the comparisons. So this is where you could see group names. We can see all of our respondents for the family survey. So we had 5,700 responses. And here's the responses for each of these questions, each of these sections, excuse me, topics. You'll see what the breakdown is by 504 plan. So of the 5,700, 5,350 did not have a 50, their child did not have a 504 plan, 347 did. So if I'm in the office of EL, I might want to focus only on this. I see that this is a huge breakdown between the students that are not EL status and those that are regarding partnerships, home, and community. So the darker the oranges, the bigger the gap is, the brighter the green is, the more favorable it is. When we click on it, we can see what the difference is. We can click on view report, and it'll take you directly to that topic and the questions that are part of that topic. Again, back under comparisons, I can change my surveys. It starts with the family. If I wanted to just look at the full-time staff, I could look at that. Here's their topics, here's their respondents, and here's their numbers, just overall. So if I wanted to look just at D-scale bus drivers, they're orange across the board. The T-scale is kind of neutral. But again, I wouldn't take any of these just as, oh, that's a lot of orange, that's a lot of green. I would certainly go more in depth and view reports. So you can see what the percentage by each group for staff for this topic. You can toggle between topics by going next. So there's a lot to play with. There's a lot to see. You can look at any individual school. You can look at any individual department. You can look just at topics. If I wanted to group it by topic, I could. So engaged workforce, compensation, and benefits. I can look just at the topic here. So FTE staff and hourly staff, here's the percent favorable for that. You can see there's a bigger gap here regarding professional learning. Now I can change my survey back over here to students and change it again to topics. So I can look just at 4th and 5th graders or 6th to 12th grades. Home over here is going to take you back to those 4 options. If you want to pick any of these, if I want to look just at middle schools, this is only going to show me middle schools. You'll see the icon here changes by school type. Panorama comes in and marks some things like greatest strength and greatest opportunity. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what their benchmark is for that. But they do mark those for us. I wanted to just look at Drew. Don't really care about the whole district. I only care about where my kid goes to school. I can look at how Drew is compared to the rest, and you'll see the title up here. So this is how we know we're at Drew only. You'll see that at Drew Elementary, they're 5 points below what the rest of elementary is. So the average of all the elementary schools at APS, it looks like they're on the lower side. They're below the average. Again, they'll mark the greatest opportunity for any place. If you want to just look at all your questions, instead of going topic by topic, you have that option at the bottom. Let me show you that again. Down here, the very bottom, and you can do that by each tab. So student, teachers, families. If I wanted to just look at questions and not go topic by topic, I would choose this. And that's my dog as well. Apologies. And so instead of by topic, you'll see this is sorted by survey order. So this is how the students saw it because it's first to last. I can do it based on question score and also based on improvement. And they'll put the unscored for improvement. And then they're going to put in the ones that they can't compare to over time also. So I really like the dashboard. I do think it's helpful. I think it definitely, I'm sorry to say, is another place for people to kind of figure out how to use and learn, but I do think that it's I think it's much easier than dashboards I've seen elsewhere. But I won't sit here and pretend that it's not going to take a little bit of getting used to and learning and knowing where things are. But it does, my favorite feature is that change over time, especially now that we've had 2 good years of not changing too many questions. Rob and I want to make sure there wasn't anything that I missed or anything you wanted to make sure that I showed.
Not anything that you missed, but Grace is actually, she was super involved with this process last year. I was a little bit more tangential. And what I would say is like, I feel like you need to kind of play around with it. You can't break it. Like, I feel like we've told people that before, like you can sort and filter and then just go back to home and start all over again, which I think is nice for someone like me who kind of gets like worried about like messing with data. You can't do that here. So that's really nice. I would also say that you just have to dedicate some time to really start to look at like what your interest areas are. Like I know we've spent a great deal of time looking at staff data and seeing like, okay, so what exactly is going on with these numbers and what are the questions that are kind of driving some of the changes. But to do that, you have to like kind of get into the filtering of it. So it's just something that, you know, the results aren't going to pop out right away necessarily. You have to just do a little bit of digging. But what I like about it is that it gives you a lot of options for a lot of ways to like drill down into the data. You know, you could do something really, you know, school-wide. You could do something level-wide, or, you know, you could look specifically at schools, which is really nice. And I think we've heard a lot of good feedback from principals really utilizing it for their schools. So that's encouraging to us because we really want people to use it.
Yeah, we did. I believe in the end of July, we did offer this same walkthrough to principals and assistant principals if they wanted to take advantage of it. So we did give them kind of the same overview that I just did. And we're always, if anybody needs to reach out, any department or anybody wants to look at their results, I believe I've worked with professional learning for a minute or 2 on something. To kind of look at their results over time to help with what they're planning. So we know that departments are using it. We know schools are using it. Some principals obviously are more interested in it than others, but those that are looking at it, you know, we've heard good things from those. So that is my portion of this. Megan, I'm going to open for questions, but I wanted to make sure that was what you wanted me to chat about. We're good?
Yes, thanks so much. I think that was really great and nice to see what's where and sort of how to start interacting with some of what's up on the dashboard, which is pretty exciting. Have we always had, when we got the data back, have we always had a dashboard, or is that unique to Panorama and it used to just be presented in another way?
For any survey or for your Voice Matters?
Your Voice Matters. Yeah. How long have we been able to really do this digging around?
I know that this dashboard existed from 2020's survey results. I don't know if it was there before that.
I don't think it was there before that.
Okay.
It was like 2020, yeah.
Yeah. But all right. So if there's are there any questions on the dashboard? I know John's going to talk a little more about data. But before I throw his presentation on, is there any questions about the dashboard? That's right, Mary Cadera. Change over time. Okay, I'm just reading our comments now.
It is really cool. I had, you know, in my reading of it, I have some things that are on an upward trend that I was super excited about, but I don't want to preempt John, so I'm gonna hold my tongue for a moment.
Okay.
No, Grace, I'm looking forward to sharing this with my team. And I think therapeutic recreation as well. I might be calling you for a quick, if you would mind doing like a quick little rundown. I think it's very helpful for our staff as well. Sure. Yeah. Okay. The teacher in me is saying that that may be enough wait time. But feel free to reach out. You all know me, so you know how to get in touch with me. But I do, again, encourage you to, if you do want to know more, I would definitely spend some time browsing that insights report, only because they definitely pulled out some highlights that, again, as someone who is outside of they're not in APS or in Arlington. So they're kind of our outside quote evaluator. And they're the ones who came back and said, here's what we kind of looked at and found. Let me go down here. So students report most favorably, they're least favorable. So I would spend a few minutes just browsing that if you do want to know more, just kind of as an overview, a big kind of like snapshot of these results for 2022.
And Grace, just to clarify, you're on the 2020 report, which is also available if you want to read both insights report.
So sorry, what now?
You're on the 2020 report,
see this,
which is also available. It's a good thing.
It is also available. It's right here under the other one.
Yeah, so you can look at both reports.
Here it is.
And we kind of pushed for them to be more similar. So they're actually good for looking at both of them for comparative reasons.
Yeah. There we go. Yes, this is the 2022 one. I know that because the picture changed. Okay. I am going to throw up John's presentation if he's ready to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That it's easy to take the rest of the meeting just to thank people between what Grace and Robin did to bring it to us, the rest of the folks on the data committee that are helping, and those of you here. It's pretty remarkable. Your Voice Matters is a truly major effort, and you can see the complexity and the number of ways to analyze the data. What I wanted to talk about for a few minutes is the interpretation of the data. That sometimes the number you look at and say, oh, that's really good. You look at the details, you say, no, it's better than that, or I'm a little bit skeptical. So I'll try to do it quickly, but that's the point I have in mind. At least Mary and Robin said digging in the data, and if there's a bottom line to what I'm going to talk about, that's the answer. You don't take the superficial numbers without thinking about it and digging deep, because sometimes they will surprise you. The details are buried. You saw the dashboard, and Grace is going click, 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 and get there. But we know that the devil is in the details, thus digging, okay? Panorama made some decisions about what to do. They chose percentages. They chose lots of averages. They rated things on the positive answers, and they defined what they considered to be a favorable response. As Grace showed you, sometimes it's the top item, sometimes it's two of them. I think it could be three. I caught it three before. I can't find it again. So what I'd like to do is go through each of these and show you what the other side is. What are the side effects of those choices? There's nothing wrong with those choices, but the other choice would give you a different feel sometimes. And so you don't want the feel to be what you're looking at. You want the data to be what you're looking at. So if you can skip to the next one, Grace, the percentage, there we go. This is one where we talk about percentages. And I just want to make sure that you understand how big a percent is in the APS system. For the high school and middle school students, it's 100 kids. So the difference between 80% and 82% is 200, 250 kids. In the earlier youth risk behavior survey a couple of years ago, we had 3% of the kids had considered suicide. 3%, that's 300, 400, 500 kids that responded on that survey, I've considered suicide. So don't let the percentages hide the numbers, and don't let the numbers confuse you, because the percentages give you a feel for the overall picture. So one is the broad picture, that the numbers themselves tell you what's left to do. Usually what's left to do is what you want to fix. You look at the good side, the favorable response, you say, that's good. Now what's left to do? And that's the opposite side. So that's what I mean by this. Grace, you want to try again? Well, let me give you an example here. You can leave this up. If I tell you that 75% of my tires are good, that's a pretty good number. It's better than 50%. If I tell you I got one of them's flat, it's a different story. And that's what's going on here. They're different stories depending on what you're looking for. Is it to fix, or is it that it's already working? Okay, let's try the next one. Averages versus details. All of the topics are scored as averages of 2 to maybe 6 or 7 questions. I was looking at one, high expectations, and the average is 50%, 52%. One of the questions has a favorable response of 25%. That's a different flavor than 50%, and very different than another question, which is 70%. So if you, and I saw some worse ones in the, there was one that related to Afghan students, I think, or Middle Eastern students, and said 100% of them did something. 2 of them had answered out of 10 or 12 that were asked. That 2 does not give you 100%. The survey is exactly right. 100% of those who answered that way, but that doesn't represent the dozen of them. So that's all this is saying. Watch the averages. They don't represent the ones that didn't answer, and that's a problem in any survey, and it doesn't represent the difference in the different questions that went into the average. What's an average vegetable?
John, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I do want to be really clear about the demographics, though, that we did not break down by Afghan. And also that if there wasn't a minimum sample.
Yeah, this was the SEL survey I was quoting.
Oh, okay, apologies. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your, I was just telling someone earlier today that I prefer criticism to compliments because I don't change what I do with compliments. And if I get criticisms, I won't make that same mistake again. So please interrupt, ask the right questions. And we want this right. Doesn't matter whether I said it right or not. We want it right when we're done. So let's go on to the next one, the positive versus negative. Yeah, this is is there some adult we can talk to? Well, 82% of the 4th and 5th grade kids says yes, we can talk to when you need help. 18% didn't. 18%, I don't know about 4th and 5th graders, but that's going to be several hundred kids. So what's good news is look how many is probably better than it has been, and we know how important that is. What isn't the good news is we've got 18% of the kids still to work on. So again, you get different questions of how are we doing is different than what's left to do. And that's why I wanted, and these were choices, they're both right. Okay, let's try the next one. There was a question, how often do you feel so stressed that you can't do what you would normally do? And of the middle high school students, 26% said almost never. The choices they had were, I have to read these to you, almost never, once in a while, sometimes, frequently, almost always. So the point is, almost never is a great response. I'm never stressed. I can do everything I want. Once in a while, is that a favorable response or is that a negative response? If you assumed it was kind of favorable, the number isn't 26% anymore, it's 51. So the panorama choice what is a favorable response can bounce these numbers considerably. You can find out what they chose by going in, as Grace has shown you, deeper into it and looking at the actual answers that were given for a specific question. But you need to know all 5 questions to know whether you agree with Panorama or not. So
can I just ask, hold on one second.
Yeah.
I think I heard Grace say content owners decide what's favorable. So I know one content
Right.
owner from Grace's first slide is HR. I think the content owners might be in APS, not at Panorama. Can you, Grace or John, clarify
Yeah.
who's deciding which
go ahead,
answers
John.
count as favorable?
Go ahead, John.
I don't have a clue
Oh,
who made
okay.
the decision.
I thought you were raising your hand. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, no, it depends on the question. It's different departments. So how often do you feel sad or stressed? Probably, I believe, Robin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, went to counseling.
Student services, yep.
Student services. So to look at that. And yeah, so Panorama gives us their opinions, but we, the content owners, are the ultimate deciders of what is favorable and not favorable.
And it makes a difference what they chose, is the only thing I'm trying to say here. That the sample size is another issue that Washington Lee didn't provide any information. So one of our major high schools isn't in this survey. If we go next year or 2 years from now, and we do it again, and they're in the survey, that's a little, that changes a bit the longitudinal, the what's changed, because now you've got a whole new group of kids with whatever the differences is between our major high schools answering next time that didn't answer this time. So going back and looking at sampling is important. If you look at individual schools, going back to the 2018 report, the last pages of their summary talk about the errors in sampling for each of the various entities that were sampled. So for the whole student body, for example, it's plus or minus 1%, which means if you have a change from 2 years ago to today of 1% or 2, it's suspect as to whether that's a real change. If it's 3 or 4%, that's probably real. Statistically, they would say that's an effect, but 1 or 2% doesn't matter. At the school level, somebody mentioned, I guess Grace mentioned Drew earlier, their figure for that was 4%. So a change at Drew of 2% doesn't mean anything to statisticians. It can feel good or bad, but the statisticians would say that's not a real change. We can't defend it. It doesn't meet the criteria, the 95% confidence level. That gets more technical, not important here, but just know that there are sampling errors just because you don't have everybody. The actual data response is perfect. Those are the kids and parents and teachers and who answered, but the ones that didn't answer aren't necessarily just the same. They may be a little different. So you imply who they are from the answers you got, and then that gives you these so-called errors. So again, digging into the data is really important. If you find something important, just like I've made a couple of statements that were corrected, you want to get them right before you go propose policy. In the past, we have the partnership, not the data committee, not the APS, not the county, but the community members of the partnership in cooperation with the statutory members of the partnership have put together reports of some complexity and have made recommendations and summaries, not unlike the ones that Panorama did, these 20, 30-page reports. And the next slide or two would show those if you want to see what we were doing. This was the charge to the partnership from the school and county board. And I think they're important to say. It's build the agenda to support the children, youth, and families. And just like we were talking earlier, the social, physical, and emotional well-being of kids. That's the purpose of the partnership. according to the school and county board. That this is from 2014. I apologize. I don't have some of the data later, and some of it's online and I couldn't get it, but that's what this is. And an example of what the partnership proposed would be on the next slide. Talking about depressive symptoms. And this is 2014, but it went back to say the first two report cards, the first two major surveys, this is how APS and the counties responded. So these are changes in the program thanks to the data. That's why data is so important. And then what happened as a result, and that's where you'd like to see the changes, and that's why longitudinal is so important. And this shows that the depressive symptoms seriously declined. So the early data, the response of the county and the schools led to some improvements in the lives of our kids. Not so bad. Last comments I would make, well, whatever, you can leave that on if you like, so people can look at it. The lower participation means the data is not quite as good as you'd hope, and Washington Liberty not being part of it is a mistake. We noted the data committee noticed that the SEL scores on the SEL survey for safety were 40-50, and on youth risk behavior were 68. And the answer is they're slightly different questions. You can't compare them, but they're both reported as safety. So again, be careful of the real question that's really being asked. And what we focused on, and didn't go very far, because as you can see, it's a huge amount of data. We were saying that the emotional regulation of kids, self-efficacy, growth mindset is really important. And we were going to look at that in future meetings. The data committee, by the way, has some techies, some policy people, older people, younger people. It's a pretty nice mix, including several of our guests today. And one of the things that we noticed, looking not just at the student scores, but at the student and parent scores, is the parents' sense of stress. The parents do not see that the kids are stressed. The kids say, oh, we really are. The numbers were dramatic. 23% of the kids say we're fine, sort of, according to whoever chose the questions, positive. Or the parents said 23% are stressed. The kids said it's 60 to 70%. So parents don't know who their kids are. And that's another concern we have. Again, they're wonderful data. As long as you dig and look at the actual questions, go for it. Let's set some policy. Let's make some changes. And the data committee will be around for a while. If we can do something to help, we'd love some suggestions from anyone. And we're happy to have guests when we have a meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, John. I think we can take the slide down and go back for discussion and questions. So I know, Grace, you were going to start, and maybe John can pick up with ideas from past years or current years on the committee with who the survey is shared with. And so I know, there are different stakeholders that find out in different ways. So Grace, do you want to start?
When you say that, can you ask that again? I'm sorry. I want to make sure I totally know what you're asking.
Let me look at the chat because I know I didn't.
Oh, is it Alicia's question? If it's Alicia's question, yeah. Okay, yeah. And I apologize, Alicia. I didn't see that before I turn it over to John. So Alicia asked in the chat, my plane friend, my friend from the plane. Now I've lost the chat.
My question, yeah, Grace, my question was just basically, what are our plans for dissemination of this information, throughout the community. And, that has been, from what I know, of course, historically, one of the roles of the partnership is to convene and to discuss and solution and all of that. So I'm just curious if maybe we're not that far yet, but I would like to, hear more.
Yeah. So as far as the partnership goes, I will let John and Megan or the entire group talk about that. But as for APS, it is public. It did go out in the Friday 5 last week, which is a weekly, top 5 things from APS that go out to anybody who's on the APS list, email list. It went out on Friday. But the results are public. But again, the data is owned. So if professional learning wants to report the results, the professional learning questions would be something that the professional learning department would look at to report out as they see fit, again, as the content owners, but anybody else can look at those as well, because it is public data. As for the partnership, I will, as for wider nets in the partnership, I will turn that over to the group or Megan or John, whoever wants to take that. Because again, it is public. So however we want to do that too.
So I can start, and this has been a topic of meetings as we were getting the data committee back off the ground. And so I will turn it over to John, but this is something that I know the partnership raised and talked about a bit in some of our prior full committee meetings and planning and development meetings in terms of, how we could get presentations out, how we could find stakeholder groups or create stakeholder group settings where we could roll out the data. There were some really creative ideas about putting kind of a punchy or interesting lead question on a sign, on a bus, for example, with a QR code, so it could say like seeking answers about whatever. So that question was opened up for some partnership preliminary thinking. But we don't have a concrete plan yet, and that's a great thing for the partnership to be working on. But John, the data committee I know is, has rolled up their sleeves with the data for a couple of meetings. So I'll turn it back to you.
Well, what we've done in the past isn't meaningful to today. That the previous partnership coordinator had an undergraduate major in communication, and she enjoyed going out giving the talk with the data. So she had the summary report that was put together by her, the data specialist, and the data committee would be very much like this report that Panorama has shown now, the 2030, but with much more data in it. And she was going to the PTAs and the service clubs and Chamber of Commerce and anything you get, parent groups all over the county. We have a list of who the report was sent to that's somewhere in the office, probably 2 or 3 pages, single spaced. So it's 100 places that the data was sent. And she probably gave a talk somewhere 2 or 3 times a week for months afterwards. There is no such person now. And if and when we have a partnership coordinator, that person may not really have either the time, because it's a new job that's been vacant for 2 years now, I guess, 1.5 years, and may not have the strong interest in presentation. And so I think we are in a new mode for releasing the data. My own personal cautions are, you've got to dig. And so ideally, you would release the data with a group when the person talking about it knows what's underlying those topic numbers. What were the questions underneath? What are the things? So I think we are struggling with the dissemination. I mean, it was published, I think the 18, well, both 18 and 20 were hard copy. So we gave those out. And I personally briefed a number of school and county board members one-on-one in the Monday sessions where they have an open house. And didn't just give them the 60-page report, but I would say, this is too much for you. You know, what you've been saying in open public meetings is you're interested in obesity and early childhood. That's on pages 17 and 24. So it was tailored, pointing, giving them the whole book, saying, help yourself, we'll answer questions. But unless you've changed your public interests and your private interests, this is where you ought to look first. So there's a whole lot that can be done. The problem is when we say we, I'm not sure there's many people behind we. Grace is plenty busy with other responsibilities. I'm a volunteer, Megan's a volunteer, and the data committee is brand new. So we're not ready to make presentations and we don't have the presentation put together. So Alicia, I think your question is a wonderful one. I would like to answer it more positively, but yes, it's on the web. Telling people to go look at the website is a good start. And then having some way when they say, what is this? I'm worried about, pick your number, stress or whether I'm excited by class. I mean, that was a terribly low number. Are you excited by your school? The answer was no. So too bad. And we ought to be able to have answers to them and say, well, here's what you can think of, or here's you go elect. I don't know. There's things to be done, and we could be everyone here, by the way. You've now had the walkthrough, so don't hesitate to spread the word. You're our gift to the community.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that exactly what Kim said earlier about, sharing it with her team. I know you all come from different departments. I think it's definitely something to share out and send. Again, it is, if you're data nerds like me, it is another data source for anybody on your team. It's more climate based, but it can also, maybe it could be something that you want to look at for doing for your organization or your clients. But so yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think please share it out. Yeah.
And then I think I might have alluded to at the beginning, but I think the data committee in the meeting that I participated in talked about being more interested in creating a report after we see the Virginia Youth Survey data, because those the reports that the partnership has put out before, those report cards kind of brought together a lot of the key responses from both surveys. And that was a nice way to package it all up together and have something in your back pocket, the report card.
I should say that, again, this thing that was called a report card, we pulled data not just from the school surveys, but from the police, from the Virginia Department of Health, from whatever we could to show, I mean, from the hospitals. We showed, how many teen births were there? How many arrests were there? How many kids graduated? I mean, the data, they were 80-page reports. And so there was a lot of information in there trying to say a more complete picture. This is a climate picture that we've got so far, not hard data, how many kids are drinking or how many kids are eating dinner with their parents, how many kids are eating potatoes. I mean, those are questions that have been on previous ones, and they all have meaning and we can track them. But if you want a complete picture, it's a lot of work, and it requires reaching out way beyond the data that's available in these surveys. And So it needs to be somebody's priority. It needs something like, a staff person to participate, even if there's guidance from the committee or the other members of the partnership.
Yeah, I again, I agree with John. It's one data. This is just one data set of many that can be used. And it is a climate survey of the schools, not Arlington as a whole. So, and I know that I personally love education and what goes into that, and that's my passion. But you all come from different passions and different departments and can bring your own data sets. And I think that this could be a place for that, to bring all of that together.
The partnership reports to both the schools and the county.
Yep.
And so looking at 0 to 5 years old, which isn't in school, and looking at 18 to 24, which isn't in school, by itself is important.
Yep.
And so we were trying to get a picture of people, some of whom thought they were grown up and they weren't yet, down from 0 to that age, and bring them all together.
I'll say also, in one place where I've seen the data be useful, again, these surveys are taken every 2 years. And so for 2 years, you have this survey to look back on. The partnership presents to a joint session of the county and school boards during the budgeting process. And so to be able to look through a budget, identify whether partnership priorities are reflected in the budget, and make a case for what should be included, what should be in the budget, or what might be taken out of the budget in terms of cuts, for example. That's a double negative, I guess, taking out a cut. But we made a case based on the data that we had that we could look back to. And so there were a lot of questions about the data. I went to that meeting again, thinking about how that data was presented in the past by the partnership. And so identifying some of the 18%, when you have 82% favorable, you're still talking about a number of kids. Looking at disparities, there are certain categories where girls, for example, report a much higher rate of, let's say, thinking about suicide. And so really highlighting those things for the county and school board for members who haven't had a chance to get too familiar with the data or think about it recently. They have a number of things that they are concerned about. Then they, in that session, look right over at Dr. Sampson or who have you, who's there visiting from school staff or county staff, and they say, hey, can we ask you a few more questions about what you meant by this and that piece of budgeting or priority, or can you give us any updates? So it's a really handy tool for that. I know that's different from communicating the data to a broader audience, but just to give you, for some folks who aren't as familiar with what we've done before, a sense of where we've brought that data
I had one
to
last
make an
comment,
impact.
which is about the value of the data that the school is doing and or the partnership if we do more. Our nonprofit community aggressively looks at this, and they have used it over and over again to get funding from other sources, either whether it's their community donations or foundations, because they can point to issues that they're working on that need some help. And once we have longitudinal data that we can trust again, they can start pointing to changes due to their program or failures of programs, and so they want to change. So that's a really important group.
So I know in the past regarding the data, we talked about how, the previous staff person assigned to the partnership, Kim Duran, was like, she loved going out doing presentations, breaking things down, letting the community know about what's in the data and whatever and how we don't have a person in that role at the moment. And so we need to come up with other strategies. I think in a previous conversation, we talked about the idea of using the data, providing the data or providing information about the survey results to different advocacy groups and say, hey, it's right there. You can go look into it, see what you think. We could even include some of John's caveats, which I think are important things to always remember when you're looking at numbers. And, you know, say, hey, it's there, it's ready, you can use it. You know, one thing is having 2 facilitators meet with 200 community groups, and the other thing is just sending out emails and putting things in announcements, getting the word out to different groups. I think perhaps too would be a good idea before we end the conversation to have a couple of action steps that at least we know we're going to be doing that between now and our next meeting in October. I also think we're having a little bit of a data shock and looking at the colossus of all the information, not sure what to do, and not really having had a chance to look at it. So we do need to absorb that. We need time for that.
And I'm happy to take feedback offline, and I'll speak for the data committee. They also, I'm sure, would welcome guests to their meetings, which are held periodically. So, and I know, you know, they're planning to dig in, and folks from this group volunteered to serve on that committee, but we also have a number of members from the community who came in through other avenues because they were interested or had special expertise. I love the data too. I know it's a tough time of day to show excitement. I do want to get to October meeting planning, but I'll give a few more minutes for this discussion before I change gear.
I just wanted to say, first, thanks to the volunteers and stretched staff who are working with this survey and this data. I know it's only one data set, but I have always found it incredibly useful. And then looking also at staff's perceptions versus students and parents, and trying to see where those things reinforce and where there may be disconnects. I dropped in the chat just some of the top level things that I thought were positives that I saw in this year's data. And then I'll just say that one of the things that really concerns me, there are some areas in the staff results where we've seen big drops. One of the things that was most alarming to me, if you look in the staff data, there is a question about being a good work being acknowledged. How often are you acknowledged for good work in your school or in your role? And that number is 17% this year, favorable. And in 2018, the last time that was asked, it was above 50%. The question is worded slightly differently if you look at the 2018 and 2022 questions. So I'm not 100% comfortable. I'm channeling John here. I don't want to draw too affirm a conclusion there, but the fact that we only had a 17% favorable rating, it's just really concerning to me.
%17% is low, regardless of any caveats. I mean, that's the data. In a sense, it stands by itself. If you take the broad number and then fuzz it a little bit and say, was that good or bad? 60% is not a good number. 17% is a terrible number. So, no, you're right. And this is not to discredit any data or say it doesn't matter. It's just, if you're looking at longitudinal, be careful and don't try to compare one piece with another if they're only a few points apart. That's all. But the data it shows strengths and weaknesses all over the place. And we should congratulate ourselves on the strengths and go back to Rick for ideas on how to fix the weaknesses. Thanks, Rick. I like your first idea. I'll work on it.
Grace, you're muted.
Nuh-uh. Dave Carlson, did you have your hand up earlier? I'm so sorry. I think I saw a visible hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was sort of going back to John's point, of course, when the school put that out, when the question I caught on to pretty quick was, is there a trusted adult in the school system that you feel comfortable going to? The answer was pretty favorable, up in the mid 80s, I think. But we used to ask that same question addressed to the whole community. And, the school is no doubt the biggest thing our children and families work with, but there's a lot of other stuff as well. And I've been looking at that number for a dozen years. And I think it'd be nice to get an answer that spread to the whole community. And I'm sure that same thing would apply to other questions they had. I'm going to look up the survey on the web and see what else I can get out of it.
One thing, I'll just jump in one more time. One thing I saw in the SEL screener that the data committee looked at over the summer, it was something Panorama did that I liked, that I haven't seen with Your Voice Matters, and they're the vendor for both. With the SEL screener, they were able to show us sort of compared to other school districts. There was sort of national kind of benchmarking of, are students in our district like on a par with others, how other students answer this? Are we better? Or are we worse? And I've always wished with Your Voice Matters, when we talk about school culture, that we could get the same kinds of benchmarking against other districts for that survey as well. And I've never been able to really determine the extent to which our questions truly are custom versus whether we change word like assistant superintendent to some other job title, but whether we could really compare to other school districts to see how our staff and families and students are feeling, what their perceptions are relative to other districts. I would love to have that at some point. We don't have it today.
Yeah, I can address that a little bit. A lot of the questions were based with Panorama when we first started working with them, but over time they have become unique to APS.
Yeah.
And so that comparison across national data, and I'm going to speak a little bit out of turn. I believe the SEL is word for word the same across a lot of the other places that they also administer it.
Yeah.
That said, from a data perspective, you can't compare apples to oranges, right? But we can look at really deep dive down into climate of, and I only know this because I'm from Cleveland, Shaker Heights, Ohio, which is a comparable to APS demographics and makeup and income to Arlington. But it's going to take, a lot more than just looking number to number, right?
Yeah.
We really have to dive down deep into it. But yeah, I do think over time, over these last 3 iterations of it, it has become very APS unique, which is why. But I think the conversations that I've overheard when we were developing and redeveloping this for 2022 was the trend data for APS was more important to the content owners than comparing to the national data. So
that's accurate, Grace. I remember those kinds. This is Robin.
Yeah.
Yes, that's completely accurate. Those were the conversations that we had. We were kind of asked to relay that those choices to the content owners. And it was always decided that they'd rather have the trend data rather than the national comparison. When we started working on the SEL, those were the given questions from Panorama, and it was more of like, which categories are we going to select to be part of the SEL survey, where ours were like definitely an evolution of questions. I worked with Rebecca and Kim and Regina on those 2018 things. And there were big changes between 2018 and 2020 in the questions, which is why you can't always see which is why you don't see the trend data from 2018. But, and they did become we had a lot of input in going into that 2020 year that changed the questions. And so then going into 2022, we kind of the content owners really landed on, let's just maintain it because we want the comparisons.
Yeah, and Dr. Sampson answered the question about the SEL in the chat. For those of you that aren't able to see that chat, he said they are, for the SEL survey, they are the same questions, the APS version and the other versions that Panorama administers across the country, although they are normed in clusters based upon the strand. As we updated the survey for this year, we had to be mindful of selecting strands in order to maintain the national comparison. So they have also continued to think about that for the SEL. Megan, I don't think that I can download Mary's notes right now, but I can after the meeting, and I can email those back out. The notes that you put in the chat, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to leave another minute for any other comments, and big thanks to Grace and John again for your presenting and deep dive. Okay, I don't know why I put an agenda together and then I just pick and choose what I want to talk about when. I will go to announcements right now in case we have staff people or community who have announcements they want to make. Thank you, Sierra. I see your note. So announcements.
I guess I can share after a long hiatus, the most beloved program, I'll say, in all of the county. TJ Skate Night is coming back. I know. It will be, I believe the first night is October 29th. So you could put on your costume and come skate. For those of you who don't know, it's indoor roller skating, like on roller skates you can rent from us, and we have a DJ and you just go around the big loop. There's a little inside section, and it is I feel like one of the few low cost things you can do for your whole family. And it's a blast, and we are excited that it's back.
I'm definitely going back to my youth of thinking how retro roller skating night is. So I can only imagine what the kids are thinking now. Megan, I believe we're having our next meeting in person. Do we have a location or anything yet?
I don't know that Sally has found a permanent location because when meetings are in person, we also need to have a virtual option. So I can't announce that yet. It will be our October meeting. And so it's as regular schedule. You might have noticed in my email, if you scroll down for future meetings, that November, as usual, is going to be a week earlier than the usual Wednesday because of the Thanksgiving holiday. And that means we're going to move the planning and development meeting up by a week as well. So those dates are in the agenda that most folks on this call received. Any other announcements before I talk a little bit about what we have in mind for October?
I'm about to email Mary's document, everyone. So
great, thank you.
Never mind. Oh.
If you don't mind, well, let me ask you again about the partnership meeting. The planning and development will be on the 2nd and the partnership will be on the 16th and the regular meeting on the 16th.
So planning and development will
Thanksgiving
be,
is a little early.
I
December.
believe
What?
Tuesday the 1st is planning and
Oh,
development
Tuesday the
because
1st.
it's on a Tuesday. And then Wednesday, November 15th will be the November meeting. October, it's regular Tuesday, October 11th for planning and development, 5:30 p.m. That's open to everyone, but it's to set the agenda. And I'll get to October's agenda in a minute. The regular meeting will be Wednesday, October 26th. So before skate night, that'll give you a solid chance to get together. And so October is in person. November will be virtual. And then we traditionally do not meet in December. So we'll go out with a virtual meeting. We get 3 virtual meetings per year, and they can't be consecutive. And so even though we technically didn't use all 3 because we just kicked in a new meeting policy, the county did in September, we'll have 1 in-person meeting in between 2 virtual meetings there. Okay. And that should be on the emails that most folks received. And meeting information also will be on the website when Sally has a chance to post that. Okay, so in our last 12 minutes, and it's been a while since I went all the way and held a 2-hour meeting, but I really appreciate folks staying on. For the October meeting, what we've talked about a little bit in planning and development and among staff, and with thanks to Judy for helping come up with this idea. Our idea and plan will be to spend some time really taking stock, pausing, reflecting on where we've been, think about where we're going as a partnership, and taking the opportunity. It'll be getting towards the end of the year. It's been a while since we had a mini retreat in the past, and for those who have been with the partnership for a while, you'll remember we really set priorities for it's been a couple of years now. We all got together and rolled up our sleeves. There were Post-it notes, there were giant pads of paper, there were markers. And so I think an in-person meeting will be a good opportunity for that. I welcome, even before the planning and development meeting, I welcome volunteers. Feel free to put up your virtual hand right now if I can see it, or put something in the chat since I can't see everybody at once. If you can help plan that. We have informally reached out to a couple of our board liaison friends for ideas about facilitators. So if you're thinking about how a facilitated meeting, thanks Judy, oh good, I can see your hand. How a facilitator might help with the meeting. And one thing I would really like to focus on in this meeting is how we can continue and build our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as we move forward as a partnership, with our priorities, what we want to do with our meetings, committee time, and so on going forward, advocacy, etc. So that's very front and center in our mind. And also think about, the balance of presentations that ways that we've learned from the county, ways that we can use our meetings to roll up our sleeves. There are different ways. Planning and development, we roll up our sleeves. It's a nice way to really think through what the partnership wants to work on. But I think, it's also nice to have that opportunity for the full partnership who might not be able to make it to the planning meetings. So there are a lot of ideas and options that we can think about. And we can talk about that in our planning and development meeting for October. But I really welcome ideas, email, chat by phone, other coordinating that we can do as well. So do folks have thoughts right now as we kind of start to think about that?
Is there a thought about the time frame for when we would have this retreat?
Oh, this is our October meeting.
Oh, it's the October meeting itself.
So 2-hour meeting in person, bring ideas. Lynn has already committed that, staff can help with what we think we might need, Post-its, what have you, ways of generating, brainstorming, generating ideas. And it'll be great to be there in person, but depending on what we come up with for an agenda, hopefully there will be ways to participate meaningfully virtually as well. So we'll, Sally will be looking for space, as she will for all of our meetings that can be hybrid participation. It's a challenge there. Arlington needs hybrid spaces, but doesn't necessarily have the rooms that we need. And things like COVID shots use up some of those hybrid spaces. So, so show some appreciation and love for Sally next time you talk to her, because we can get a cancellation on the space that she had reserved for clinics or what have you. So. Thoughts, folks who have maybe in other contexts or Arlington contexts had these kind of mini retreat brainstorms and reflection, things that you value. I welcome any comments and preliminary feedback right now.
Megan, it's Judy.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm in my car, so I can't tell. It's crazy in the dark. I was just going to say, probably a lot of people wouldn't be able to come to planning and development, and they might not be, sure tonight about would be helpful, but if they could send you their ideas for the meeting, whether they've experienced a partnership retreat or not, it would be really helpful. So that's my only thought right now.
Thank you. Yes, Judy. I'd be really grateful. What you love, what we can work on, what you've best practices, what you've really learned from or gained in other settings or from the partnership.
Maybe a good idea to send out just a questionnaire or something. I'm not sure why my creative juices are not flowing tonight. I don't know why, but I'm sure I'll have some ideas tomorrow in the shower. But if you sent out like a question, just something to stimulate questions, I think that would be a good idea, and we can email them back to you or give you a call.
I think that's a good idea. Good idea, Rick.
Great. And I know, Rick, tomorrow you'll think of prompts that you can send me.
Yeah.
And other folks as well.
Yeah.
Great. Others, last ideas. And if you keep hearing me say, just reach out to me, but you don't have my email address, raise your hand, or I'm hoping our website has Sally Labante's contact information. Again, she's stuck on vacation unexpectedly, but she will be back and she can forward and field any questions to me. Oh, thanks, Rick. All right. Well, it's so wonderful to see you all. Thanks so much for joining. It's great to see you and look forward to seeing you in October. Thank you again, John. Thank you very much, Grace. Thank you, Robin, for joining with Grace, Robin number 2. to help educate us about evaluation at APS. And
Dr.
to
Sampson.
Dr. Sampson, to Mary Kadera, appreciate the participation. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Good night.